or what we attach self-esteem to is seeking this or these attributes in others. We're looking for self-validation. Again, self-validation. We're looking for approval and acceptance and worthiness. But at the end of the day, it goes back to how a person believes, and the key word believes, about himself.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
So what we're going to be talking about today is a couple concepts dealing with emotional intelligence. And while we're talking about this, I'm going to be discussing a few concepts in which to increase your emotional intelligence and increase your awareness to be able to use this for your benefit. And one of the ways that I found that has helped me, and I think that I'm going to try to teach to you today, is how to ultimately use stoic concepts, stoicism, in order to have a high level of emotional intelligence. So what we're going to do is we're going to define today what I'm going to use as the definition for emotional intelligence, which is the ability to understand and comprehend your own emotions in order to assess what's happening in your thoughts. And you want to use this in a way in order to cause growth and elevation. What emotional intelligence does, it creates, or it makes possible for you to predict ultimately how you're going to become successful and have a high level of achievement, because it demonstrates how a person can immediately apply knowledge in any given circumstance. So what are we talking about? Or when we're talking about emotional intelligence, we often have to as well speak on self-esteem. And so when we talk about self-esteem, we're talking about two different words, but we often use it as one: the self and the esteem. And defining self-esteem, we're going to use this definition. It is the values of yourself, imagination. This is where the personal beliefs come about, and all of the attributes and the features that presents itself in yourself. Self-imagination has in particular importance, because, especially to mental health experts, because it deals with the person's imagination, his personality, the personal, and his personal reality. And it's dealing with it to a high degree that when you're dealing with your own personal reality, you're forming pictures and imaginations about your environment. And this is how you actually go about planning your behaviors. Or what we attach self-esteem to is seeking this or these attributes in others. We're looking for self-validation. Again, self-validation. We're looking for approval and acceptance and worthiness. But at the end of the day, it goes back to how a person believes, and the key word believes, about himself. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the wellness wheel. And if you haven't studied the wellness wheel or looked at the wellness wheel, I'll link some information so you can see visually what I'm talking about. But the wellness wheel is of particular importance because it is a model. It shows how the body or the mind and all of the spiritual all works together. It touches on several aspects of a high functioning person. So within the wellness wheel, there's several aspects that we're going to talk about today. And obviously there's more things that we can discuss, but these are the ones that I'm going to use today, and we're going to tie it back into how we can use stoicism to work all of these things to be a high functioning person. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about within this wellness wheel is the intellectual, which within the intellectual, we're going to deal with the emotional intelligence, the social, which would be behaviors, the spiritual, which would be the self-imagination. I'm not talking about necessarily being religious, but I'm talking about dealing with or operating at a high spiritual level, which would be your self-imagination. Your self-imagination is what creates thought, and your thought expresses what creates your reality. And then we're going to deal with the emotion or the emotional side. So emotions. So I'm starting here for a particular purpose. Understanding of where I'm going with this and how to tie this into stoicism. So what are emotions? Emotions basically are energy in motion, because everything is energy. And we are expressing what we are interpreting from this external stimuli through the various feelings that are felt in the body. I want you to pay particular attention to that key word that I just said, the body. And because we're always noticing and we're always interpreting what we're experiencing through the assumptions, and what we think of as reality isn't actually reality. It's usually coming from internal. It's coming from the thoughts or the energy that eventually turn into thoughts, and then those thoughts are expressed through our interpretations and our assumptions. And then we act out on those based off of those. And that is what we create in our reality. That's what we see in our reality. And so what we do know is reality isn't always real, because what one person may experience, the other person may not. So it's very fluid. This is why we have to understand our emotions and practice a high level amount of emotional intelligence. We have to deal with and we have to learn skills to effectively process those feelings and those emotions. Really intense emotions usually are going to cause like some physical ailments that can lead to what we define as mismatched diseases, such as in the story of the human body. And some of those diseases, just to give you an example, cancers and different ulcers and high blood pressure, just to name a few. But a lot of these things start to compound, especially when things and emotions are repressed. So by definition, emotions are felt responses to important psychological situations that include changes in your feelings. Again, the changes in your feelings, what's going on upstairs, your appraisals, how you are assessing things, and then those lead to your bodily responses and actions. Next, spiritual wellness. This is the next aspect of the wellness wheel. So what does spirituality have to do with anything? Well, at the basic level of spirituality, and no, I'm not talking about religion, because it goes back to the personal self, the personal reality, or your personality, what you resonate with. And that may not necessarily resonate with one spiritual practice. That might be several spiritual practices, or it might be a singular spiritual practice. It doesn't matter. But the purpose of all of those things is to explain, ultimately being able to explain what you believe and why you believe it. And ultimately what you're trying to practice to get to is, because we're all energy, and energy creates vibration. And so you're trying to transcend into higher vibrations. And ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to practice compassion. Hopefully you're trying to practice compassion, love, and forgiveness, which leads to even higher levels of vibration, leading to joy and peace. Now, every spiritual practice, every spiritual sage has ultimately been alluding to, these couple of levels, which would lead to joy and peace. And sometimes it's often alluded to as peace that is surpassing all understanding. Now, we're all human, and nobody's perfect. And so we all are trying to get to that point. But we also have to look at where we are, assess where we are. And once we're honest with ourselves and assess where we are, that's where you can start to move forward in your thoughts that will lead you to a higher level. Well, I was reading this book. It's called by David Hawkins, and it's called Letting Go. And he has the consciousness pyramid, or the consciousness flow chart. But in this book, it's called Letting Go. The book is called Letting Go. Letting go, and it's often actually counterintuitive to what you think you should do, or what most people are trying to do, is they're trying to think their way out of things. But because we are energy, or spiritual, or consciousness, we are experiencing what we're feeling, or what we're thinking, and that is what is expressed into our reality. And so, in order to counterintuitively, in order to bend reality, so to speak, is sometimes we have to just let go. And we've all been there, where we might be frustrated about something, and you just get to a point where you just don't have the mental capacity to deal with it, and you just, oh well, I'm not going to deal with that today, or I'm just going to let it go, and it's going to be what it's going to be. But ultimately what that is letting go is the process of releasing whatever fears is associated with that. It's what's going on internally that we're releasing. We're letting go of or dropping the weight, so to speak. And as things come up and release it, you'll notice that you feel a lot lighter. You feel a lot better, because that's closer to your true self. So, what you have to do to increase your high level of spirituality is you have to look at the inner areas, those immature, undeveloped areas that need to be examined. And it's the self-imagined part of ourself that needs to sit back, and it needs to reflect. And those are the things that we're reflecting on that need to be challenged. So you need to challenge those biases and beliefs, and deal with those repressed energy, or those repressed emotions, because it's the emotions that bind us to certain situations and other people. But oftentimes, if it's not dealt with, that's what causes the genes, those mismatched diseases, those genes to turn on in the study of epigenetics, that make us sick, because we're holding on to emotions, hoping to punish others, but it only punishes ourselves. It's like drinking poison, hoping someone else will get sick. Spirituality is just a vehicle in which it allows the mind a safe space in which to operate, And sometimes that does require us to get alone, be with our thoughts. These are the things that affect change ultimately over the long haul within ourselves and then eventually within our reality. And as you start to release things, you start to see things change, and then you can let go more. So the next step in this process is dealing with the social behavior. So what is happening inwardly is often expressed outwardly, which is in our behaviors. And so social skills are the capabilities or the aptitudes that you employ as the individual when you're interacting with other people. How is this all connected? Well, social behavior is constructed by the knowledge of yourself and is the formulation of your own self-concept. And this is how other people respond to you. So the skills that you need to develop is in order to have high levels of social awareness is self-control. Shocker. Self-regulation, which is the ability to regulate one's behavior. Empathy and reciprocity. When these skills are developed, it is a source of enjoyment. It is also a source of emotional support, because you are building relationships at this point. And in building relationships, sometimes you need that intimacy and that help and affection and inclusion and belonging. And only when you are accepting of yourself can others be accepting of you. So how does this all tie into being stoic or in the practice of stoicism? And how does it tie into emotional intelligence? Well, I'm going to use an example of Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor of Rome at the time. And he studied the works of Seneca. And he himself is known as a great writer of some of the stoic writings that we have come to know today and practice today. But he wrote this book, and it's called Meditations. And really, it wasn't a book at all. And he never expected for anybody to use his works as a personal direction in which to learn how to use stoicism. Actually, he was a man. He was very angry at a lot of different things because he had a lot of things coming his way. And so he had to deal with a lot being the emperor of Rome. And that Rome of that day was huge. It was massive. So it was a great empire of that day. And so what he would do is he would have to journal his thoughts about some of the feelings, the things that he was dealing with within his work life, his frustrations and his troubles. And these were his notes. And so, but in his notes, he would write out and he reflect on some of the stoic wisdoms that he would have to practice. And so we use this as a model of high level intelligence. And in my opinion, nobody is without trouble, because it's in the troubles that you get the ability to learn or to express yourself or to use those experiences to create a system that works for you, that helps you self-regulate and stay in control. Marcus Aurelius had to stay regulated at all times. He was not a man without trouble. Of course, he was the emperor of Rome, so he had a lot of power and a lot of responsibility, but he was not without frustrations. If you really think about and go back into history and read up on Marcus Aurelius, you'll notice that he ruled in the day of one of the deadliest plagues of the day. He had to deal with dangerous revolts. He had to deal with rumors against himself and people uprising against him, people that called themselves his friend. And then he also had to declare and face threats of war from other European countries. Marcus journaled a lot. And the theme was he had to learn how to curb his emotions and to think logically and to think stoically so he could make better decisions. He developed strategies in order to combat his knee-jerk reactions. Now, I go back and I say that, yes, he was an angry man. He had rules to govern his own life. And so out of the Meditations, the book that he wrote, these are the things that came about. And he was never heard complaining about anything, even about anything to himself. So that was one of the first ones. Never be complaining, even when the complaints about yourself, because your mind doesn't know what's real or false. It's just responding to what you're saying to yourself. Again, it's the self concept or the self esteem. Do what's essential. Don't suffer imagined troubles. And I want you to take a high level of degree on that one, because don't suffer imagined. Again, it goes back to imagined troubles. Focus on the effort and not the outcomes. Again, this is always going back and tying into what's going on upstairs. Chase sympathy over outrage. Think of progress, not perfection. Let go of anxiety. Be strict with yourself. Again, yourself and not with others. Treat success and failures the same. What does that mean? That means walking the middle path, because we want to create value. We want to label things good and bad, but at the end of the day, where does good and bad begin, and where does good end, and where bad begin, and vice versa. And then really uber important is control what you can control. We tend to think that we have to be in control in every situation, and we don't live in the now. Well, that really severely limits us and ill-equips us for the different variations that life can bring us. We become inflexible, and we become stubborn. And then when things aren't going our way, it really rips us and tears us apart. And although this is not an exhaustive list, I really encourage you to really work on yourself, really do the work, the high level of a work that it takes to increase your awareness, that's going to bring you to a high level of emotional intelligence. And I want you to police yourself. And these things ring true throughout the ages. And academically, when you prove that you do have a high level of emotional intelligence, this is going to lead you to a high level of success. And with that, thank you for listening.